Welcome, everybody, to Sportico Live. This edition, we examine the valuations of Major League Soccer clubs. And kicking it off, we are joined by the commissioner of MLS, Don Garber. Don, thanks so much for joining us.
Great to be here, guys. And congratulations on everything that you're doing. And it's a great sort of hats off to entrepreneurs in a space that is important for all of us in the sports industry. So look forward to some fun together.
You are too kind. Of course, I'll turn it over to Eben Novy-Williams in a moment. Later on, I'll be talking with Jason Levine of DC United. We have Kurt Bodenhausen, who did all the heavy lifting on these valuations with the owners of LAFC, Larry Berg and Peter Guber. But Don, let me ask you one overarching 30,000-foot view question before I turn it over to Eben. The reaction to $800+ million valuations, I'm not sure that man on the street would have seen, 1, 2, 3 teams eclipsing an $800 million valuation in MLS. So you take that away, and then I'll turn it over to Eben.
Pleased at it, Scott. You look at those teams that are valued at that level, a lot of investment, a lot of infrastructure, a lot of commitment to building a fan base locally, creating relevance in their markets, driving revenue, significance, right? And that's what sports teams got to do to be successful, to matter to partners, to fans, to, the community. Take the top, LAFC. You go to one of those games, man, it's one of the great sporting events in the country. There's enormous buzz about it. And that buzz is leading to, an increased value to that team as they've been raising money and recapitalizing their structure. So I'm proud of all of our clubs and really pleased to see where valuations are.
I'm excited to have this conversation now, Don, because it seems like such an interesting time. On one hand, we're 18 months into a pandemic that has been especially hard on sports and entertainment franchises and leagues that rely heavily on tickets like MLS does. On the other hand, valuations have never been higher, as we're talking about. In your assessment, the health of MLS right now, give me kind of a breakdown of how you balance soaring valuations with what has been obviously a difficult time pandemic-wise.
Well, listen, last year was a tough one for us, for every sports league or anybody in our industry, but certainly probably for every business here around the world. But we got through it, and we got through it because of the strength and stability of the league today. I think if we were faced with the COVID pandemic 5 years ago, I'm not quite sure we'd be as confident and frankly as strong as we are sitting here today. We took a big revenue hit. We are primarily a ticket-driven business, but we got into the bubble in Orlando and we were able to deliver for our partners. We got back into our markets. We were able to sell some tickets later in the year. We had our final in front of home fans in Columbus. I mean, think about that. The only league to be in a bubble, go back into our home markets and then have a hosted final. And all of that sort of has led to, I'd say, strength to strength. Eben, our partners stood by us, our banks stood by us, our owners stood by us, our fans stood by us, and empowering the 2021-26 season for Major League Soccer. So financially, I'd always love to drive more revenue and have bigger media deals and have higher ticket prices and sell more Adidas merchandise on Fanatics or in our stores. But we're feeling pretty good about where we are today.
We'll get into all those things. I'm curious, you mentioned 5 years ago, this might have been a different conversation. The league is bigger now than it was 5 years ago, of course, but what's been the big change that you think, what is MLS doing now that makes it a bit more insular to a lot of these problems than it would have been?
It's a really good question. I think scale is a part of it, right? You have more owners, you have more cities, you have more fans. We've broadened our entire perspective, not just sort of how we think about our business, but where we're touching down in our markets. So when you think about MLS expansion, a story I'm sure we'll talk about, it was creating these circles around big markets in the United States and Canada and small markets as well, but connecting those concentric circles so that you can create a web of a national fan base. And as we had more owners, there's more commitment, there's more infrastructure, there's more investment, there are more fans, there's more relevance in our community, there's more buzz around Major League Soccer. That leads to greater investment capital obviously gives you more strength and a bit more stability.
How do you view expansion kind of in this conversation about the growth over the past 15, 20 years? Obviously, every time there's a new expansion fee paid, that gets split up among the owners. They're also diluting themselves in the global pool of MLS shares, more or less. How important has that been? And as a second part of the question, does that continue? Are you happy at 30? Where do you think about kind of turning that spigot off?
So when I came into the league, I remember sitting down with Phil Anschutz and Robert Kraft and them saying, hey, we put $5 million to start this league. And right now we're leading into a point where we're not sure we're going to be able to continue to operate the business the way it was originally structured. The league had operated 3 teams. So Mark Abbott, our president, would, go from one office and make a trade with himself and have to go in the other office. That's really not true, but it's kind of cute. We had to get out of league-operated teams, and we folded teams, as you well know. And then it was a couple of years from 2002 before we even had expansion again. And that happened in Salt Lake, and it happened in our second team in Los Angeles. And those expansion fees were $5 million, right? And today, David Tepper paid $325 million, and we have teams valued at over $800 million. That really isn't the point, right? Expansion is about growing a fan base. It's about creating connections in the community. It's about growing the significance and relevance of your league and the sport overall in North America and influencing around the world. It's about creating a commercial market. Right? We started Soccer United Marketing many years ago to raise the commercial value of soccer in our country. And now you could argue we're the most valuable soccer market commercially in the world. And none of that could have happened if not expanding our ownership group from the original handful to the many, many owners, almost 50 people on the MLS Board of Governors. And that influence, that idea sharing, that commitment is what's driven MLS to the values where we are today for this conference, but most importantly, to make Major League Soccer what it is in terms of its significance in the world of global football. And all of that would not have happened if we didn't grow beyond the 3 or 4 original owners.
Yeah, and the makeup of those owners has changed a lot. Also, I mean, it's not lost on me that in the past 3 years, you've added 3 billionaire families that also own NFL teams. I would imagine the conversation that you have among owners has also changed a bit as the makeup of the ownership also changes.
Yeah, again, I talk about this sort of a lot when we speak internally about the evolution of how the league needs to manage its board, right? And it was both easier, but at times odd and almost surreal to have one owner own 6 teams at one point, and another owner own 3 teams, and then one owner own 1, right? Board meetings were easier, but that's not a proper sports league. It would not continue to exist, obviously, if we were structured that way. Diversity of thought is what is the most important aspect of the new owners over the last 10 years. And whether it's Hank Paulson coming in and thinking about governance perhaps differently than we did in the past, or it's the guys in LAFC, Larry Berg and his partners, Brandon Beck and Bennett Rosenthal and Peter Guber, brilliant guys in sports and finance who are thinking about building a sports team in a great market with a great downtown stadium at a time 20 years after MLS was founded, right? Having Man City, the owners of Man City coming in and the owners of the Red Bulls with multiple, footholds in global soccer or global football, having the most female owners representing our teams than any other league, having a number of diverse owners that could help us think about all the different things that are going on in the sports world today, perhaps differently than we would have 10 years ago. All of that is what makes NFL such a rich, contextual sports league. The last thing that I'll add to that, which is important, is thinking about the succession of ownership. We have a bunch of young owners. We've got a guy like Merritt Paulson in his 40s, or Anthony Precourt, 35,000 season ticket waiting list in Austin, Matthew McConaughey and Eddie Margain. These guys are in their 40s, and they think about sport and the long-term investment of Major League Soccer perhaps differently than, maybe one of our older, more established owners that owns NFL teams might think about the business.
For sure. And I think about kind of the economics of most major sports leagues as being fairly similar. There's local revenue, there's ticket sales, there's national revenue, there's media. The numbers are vary in size and the percentage buckets may vary in size, but the business is kind of similar. One thing I think that sticks out about MLS is when you look at the valuations and particularly the multiplier on revenue, what people are paying right now, it's way higher than it is in other leagues. Pressure might not be the right word, but do you feel as though right now for MLS, there's the valuations are baked into an expectation of growth in a way that exists in other leagues, but maybe not to the degree that it does right now for soccer in America?
Yeah, Evan, I think I brought in over 20 of our owners, maybe more. And at no time do we get into a discussion on revenue multiples. What they're thinking about is, what does the team cost today from an investment? What's required to continue to invest in that club, in its facilities, in building a fan base, and in ensuring that you've got the right staff to build the opportunity or capture the opportunity? And then what will that look like in time? And it's interesting, and just I spent a lot of my time with our owners and investors, new investors in particular. And when you could talk to one might have bought an NBA team recently, and the MLS team that he's looking at purchasing is cost valued more and will cost more than the NBA team that he bought 6 years ago. What does that really mean? It means that look at what that NBA team is valued today. It's almost 5x what he paid for. And that same theory would apply to his MLS team, would exponentially grow in value. And why? Why? Because the opportunity is still ahead of us. Our best days are still ahead. We have the youngest, most diverse fan base in all of professional sports. What will that look like in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and 20 years? We have the World Cup coming here in 2026. How will that empower and drive and energize this great opportunity? Global football is becoming more relevant and more prevalent, throughout the sports industry here today. What will that mean in terms of value? When you think about our new teams, St. Louis has 50,000 season ticket deposits in a 20,000 seat stadium, and they don't play for 2 years. So those are unheard of numbers. Charlotte playing next year, 35,000 season tickets. These are things that we couldn't have expected to happen. And frankly, when I look back on it, for the people that have bought those teams years ago, if I probably thought they'd be worth what they are today, maybe we didn't do a good job in pricing those teams when we sold an expansion team. So,
yeah, too bad you can't go back and raise that thing retroactively. Don, you mentioned in there the World Cup. I've heard, you've talked for years about the benefit of the 2026 World Cup. The last World Cup, Men's World Cup that was hosted in America, was essentially the launching point for MLS as a whole. Walk me through how hosting the biggest event in global soccer here in the U.S. benefits, from a business standpoint, MLS.
I don't think there is a business anywhere that could have a forward look, Eben, of what will that business look like? What will the market look like? What will the opportunity be 5 years from now? I don't care what company it is. We know today that 5 years from now, the World Cup will be in the United States. It will be in 12 markets in the U.S. It'll be in Mexico. It'll be Canada. We have teams in Canada. We have a competition going with Mexico. So what is it that we can do to take advantage of the biggest sporting event in the world that we know will happen? We know what the date's going to be. We now can prepare. How do we get our cities energized and involved? What do we need to do to get sponsors, new sponsors that might be thinking about global football, and now their global football is going to be turning its attention to the U.S., Canada, and Mexico in 2026. How could we have a lead up to that moment? What can we do to build a fan base, knowing that we've got all these folks that are going to be tied into the drama, the thrill of victory, and all of the agonies of defeat that happens in and around, the World Cup. All those things will empower the opportunity for us. And I will say, I don't think that this is driving MLS values. I just think it's one of the many fact points that are, things that we could point to that are allowing Major League Soccer teams to capture the values that they are today, because it is a forward-thinking, best days ahead approach to what it is that people are thinking about when they're making an investment in MLS.
we had Mark Lasry, the co-owner of the Bucks, on our podcast earlier this week, and he bought the Milwaukee Bucks back in 2014. He and Wes Edens paid $550 million. It was a record at the time. People thought they were crazy. And flash forward 7 years, he's an NBA champion. The team's worth $1.8 billion, and he's laughing, right? He knew things that I think a lot of people didn't. One of the things he said that he felt was that the revenue was about to, particularly on the media side, was about to explode. He knew the TV contracts were up. He had a good idea that the next round of media negotiations was going to be very fruitful for the league. You guys are kind of in a similar position now. You're in the market right now, starting to talk about your next media deals. Right now, you're with Fox, Univision, and ESPN. How important is this next round for you guys, and how important is getting a kind of a hefty rights increase versus what you have right now?
It's a great question. So, the answer to the last part of the question, it's very important, right? We continue to get engaged with our current partners, as you mentioned, ESPN, ABC, the Disney family of companies, Fox and Univision. But we're looking at a world that's dramatically changing. That we're living in a world of streaming, direct to consumer programming. MLS fans index higher than other sports league fans because they're younger. They're probably more cable nevers than cable cutters. So soccer fans generally, you could ask NBC this question or ask Paramount, CBS folks this question, very likely to engage in a new subscription for a streaming service to follow their favorite soccer teams or favorite leagues or favorite competitions. So that plays into empowering our excitement, enthusiasm, and confidence as to what this will look like as we go through these negotiations over the next 12 months. But I think it's important to point out that when people are making this investment, they're not thinking about the next deal. They're thinking about what will this look like generationally? What will it look like probably the deal after that? What will MLS look like, not just in the next 3, 4, or 8 years, but what will it look like in the next 10 to 20 years? So I will say probably different perhaps than an NBA owner might have made before the last unbelievably spectacular media deal, is thinking about all the touch points, all the revenue buckets that will grow over time without doubt. Nobody doubts that MLS's revenues will grow.
And when you think generationally, is there a point where you think MLS is bringing in more on the media side than it is on the game day revenue side? Is that a ratio that you don't think flips at any point soon? Kind of, how do you think about those?
It's funny. I've never thought about where that tipping point is between game day revenues and media revenues. I look at the baseball model. They got a lot of game day revenue. They've got a lot of games, and they've got a lot of media revenues. I kind of like that, right? So, our goal
is a good answer.
Drive as much revenue as we possibly can. We're getting into a unique dynamic in ways that are kind of cool because we didn't expect it. We didn't expect last weekend 67,000 people in Atlanta, or their average of about 40 to 50,000, or those kind of numbers in Seattle, and similar numbers that I'm sure we're going to see in Charlotte. So because we went from big stadiums to building soccer stadiums, 22,000, and now we have a number of markets that are playing in NFL stadiums. So, game day revenues will still be a big part of our dynamic. We have, 34 games that we're playing. There's a lot of opportunities for us to drive that, but we clearly do need to drive our media revenue no different than any other sports league.
One thing we have to talk about when we talk about the media side, Soccer United Marketing, the marketing arm for MLS for a long time, and including the current TV deal that you guys are under, includes rights to U.S. soccer. Moving forward under this next negotiation, you guys are separating. You guys are no longer managing the media rights for U.S. soccer. How does that affect both the media deal you guys are looking at and also kind of the valuation and business side of these teams? I've talked to a number of owners who have invested over the past 10 years in MLS. A lot of people point to Soccer United Marketing, the equity they get in that as virtue of being an MLS owner, as one of the things that's really valuable to them. How does MLS move forward without U.S. soccer in that portfolio?
Well, it's a good question, and it's a great story. When we formed Soccer United Marketing in 2002, we did it out of necessity. FIFA could not sell, believe it or not, the English language World Cup rights for the 2002 and the 2006 World Cups in Korea, Japan, and in Germany. So we went out and said, well, we'll buy it. And then we went and packaged MLS rights and U.S. soccer rights. neither property was getting paid for its media. So it was at the right time, the right thing to do. As we've evolved over the last 20 odd years, we don't need the U.S. soccer intellectual property, and they don't need us. So it was not a driver of our economics. It was more strategic, Eben, than it was financially. The driver of Sum's revenues dramatically are the MLS intellectual property rights, our media rights, our local media rights, national media rights, our sponsorship rights, our licensing or merchandising rights, our rights from the Mexican Federation. We just had, we're promoting the Gold Cup going on now. We're doing incredibly well, generating more revenue there by far than we did on our representation of the sponsorship rights and media rights for U.S. soccer. So, I think it's a natural evolution. We were their agency. And what's the best example of doing a great job when you're an agent? The people bring it in-house. I'm on the board of U.S. Soccer. I support their decision. I wish them luck. I don't think it will have any impact whatsoever on the value of Soccer United marketing whatsoever, frankly.
Gotcha. Interesting. And I got a few other ones I want to mention before we go, or before I let you go. One thing we've seen across almost all the major sports in the past 18 months, they're becoming more open to private equity investments. The NBA may be the most obvious version of this. They've approved a few funds. I think there's 6 or 7 teams at this point that have taken investments. I understand that owners at MLS have considered at least opening things up to allow private equity investors. Can you give us an update on where that stands? Is that something that's allowed right now? Something that might be allowed in the future?
Sure. So, I think the NBA, baseball, MLS have all looked at sort of changing our ownership rules to allow for, private equity investment to come into the league. I think it's smart. We did, I know you know this well, we did have Providence Equity make an investment in Soccer United marketing years ago. Mm-hmm. And that was, 5, 6, 7 years ago. It was allowing us to take a piece of equity in a company that was wholly owned by the MLS owners, use that money to drive a lot of opportunity. And then ultimately we bought them out. It worked out well for them, and it worked out well for the Major League Soccer owners. I think you're going to see there's so much money in the marketplace right now, and to be able to get some of the really smart people in the business to invest without a path to control, without anything other than capturing the appreciation, and there's been a lot of appreciation, sports teams, particularly in Major League Soccer, makes sense. So I think you'll see more and more of it. You'll see it in Major League Soccer in deals that could conceivably get announced pretty soon, but I'm a big fan of it. I love the guys that are talking to us, and I think it'll be good for our clubs.
Has that rule change officially happened? If I was an MLS team right now?
We haven't closed any deals yet, but the rule change happened last year, and I think you'll see a number of deals happen over the next 12 months for sure.
Got it. Interesting. Yeah, I find that to be one of the more interesting trends across our business in the past 18 months is the fact that, a lot of leagues like yours, like the NBA, did not allow this, 2 years ago. And now there's obviously capital constraints because of COVID. Yeah,
and I would also say too, these people, look at Mark Lazary and Wes Edens in Milwaukee, just to pick the NBA champions, 2 financial guys, right? We have a number of folks from the private equity world or in the hedge fund world that are owning teams in Major League Soccer, and they're coming into these leagues, and they have a perspective that I think is a bit different than the sports industrialists. Those that were the original pro sports team owners, back in the day, and we have many of them that are still
like Crafts and Hunts. Is that
the Crafts and Hunts and Arthur Blank and Stan Kroenke? These guys are the foundational owners in MLS. Cliff Illig and his partners in Kansas City, and then you start seeing the new owners coming in. Many of them are younger, and financial people aren't just about money, right? They're thinking of these are their limited companies, their investments that they're making. They sit on those boards, and they're smart, right? So and then when they go and want to make investments in sports, yes, it's a financially a positive thing to be able to get the right deal and the right partners in, but there's also some strategic value.
There's another class of minority owner in MLS that's getting a lot of attention, the celebrity owners. It seems like MLS has done a really good job of courting, from Matthew McConaughey to Mark Ingram. There's LAFC. I feel like the entire ownership group fits that category. Kevin Durant, another one that pops out. Why do you think MLS has been kind of particularly, it seems, attractive to people like that?
I think it starts that there's a lot of athletes start with athletes that have acquired great wealth, right? So James Harden is a good example who made a significant investment in Houston, and then in that team just recently sold. He stayed in. James is he's a smart guy, really smart, got great advisors and sees value in MLS, and he's smart and wants to sort of learn the business. And I'm meeting more and more with athletes that have great managers and looking to diversify their investments, but also their sports guys, right? So that they really bring to their ownership a perspective of fan development and management of intellectual property or what a brand might look like in ways that are positive. And then you get guys like Will Farrell or Matthew. They're just fun, right? I mean, Will Farrell and Matthew are deeply engaged in helping to promote their teams because they love the club. I mean, this is not just a vanity investment. I mean, Will Farrell is working and Matthew is working, right? And that is just incredibly awesome. I mean, they brought the cast for Ted Lasso to the most recent LAFC. And they were in the stands going crazy. I mean, it was just a great marketing opportunity to build that brand and connect it to something that's culturally relevant. And I think you'll see more and more of that. Today we announced Patrick Mahomes just made an investment in Sporting Kansas City. Local guy. His wife played the game. He's a fan. He's gone to U.S. national team games. He's come to Sporting Kansas City games. Why not make an investment in it and sit in some way around the ownership table and learn about, maybe he'll learn enough to buy a team outright, whether that's an NFL team, an NBA team, or an MLS team.
One of the things I find so interesting about this kind of class of investor is that in a lot of other sports, we generally see minority stakes sell at kind of a discount because you usually don't get control of the ownership. It's just a minority passive stake. In MLS, it feels like we're seeing almost the opposite. We reported on Mark Ingram's DC United deal. I think the valuation there was $715 million, something right in that range for a very small piece of DC. I'm curious why you think that it seems like in MLS, at least, the LP stakes don't actually sell for a discount in the way that they do in other places.
Yeah, I do think it's about, the owner of that team didn't have to sell anything, right? So if you're going to come in and the valuation really should be at what that team would be worth, it was going to be sold, right? Because it's not, it in essence it's the story with MLS. You're selling the future. And Mark came in, what a great owner he will be, great partner that he'll be with Steve Kaplan and Jason Levy, and a great valuation for that team. They're building they built a great stadium. They're now in the process of building a great training ground. They're in a top market. Their facility is perfectly located. They've got development rights around it. They're going to have a sports betting possibility or an opportunity connected to their stadium. The brand is strong and relevant. So all those things create value. And if you want to come in, it's going to be at a price or at a value that owner is willing to sell at, minority or, a larger piece.
We've got a few minutes left, but I want to also ask you about Mexico. We had some DC United, as you're just describing, some of their investors just bought a team down in Mexico. You guys have been working with Liga MX on various partnerships and cups for a long time. I know there's been talks of a merger. Can you give us an update on kind of where that stands, what you see as potentially in the tea leaves for Liga MX and MLS moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, nothing but opportunity. I can't sit here today and say ultimately what that's going to look like 10 years from now. What I'll tell you in the short term, in a few weeks, we'll be playing our All-Star game against the MLS, the Liga MX All-Stars. So, we'll have two of their biggest stars in Carlos Vela and Chicharito playing for Major League Soccer, right? Not for Liga MX. I mean, how cool is that? And you're going to see more and more programming between our two leagues. And I think that programming will be really, really exciting and really valuable. The idea that you could create inter-league competition between Liga MX, that's got a big fan base, and MLS has got a big fan base, offering something that no other league in North America can offer, which is cross-border competition with meaningful matches. They're not regular season matches, but it's a meaningful competition. There'll be prize money, and I think it'll capture an enormous amount of opportunity for both our leagues. I'm very excited about it.
I'm jumping in here, Eben. One, to say I must be the only fool who hasn't seen Ted Lasso. I'll wait till the whole thing's done and I'll binge it in a weekend. But two, hey, Don, I don't want to embarrass Eben, but, can I scold him while we're doing this together here?
Of course you can. I mean, he works with you, man.
Yeah, great. We have to make this fun, right? You mentioned Mark Lassery, right?
Yeah.
And Eben said nothing. Who was our podcast guest today?
Oh, he mentioned it.
I did mention it.
Oh, you did? Was I not looking?
Yeah.
You just scolded yourself.
Great. Hey, somebody has to scold me. If it's me on myself, that's fine. Great. Because it was a
great
conversation.
You weren't paying attention, man. Congratulations to Mark and Wes. I mean, what a great story for the NBA and a great brand. I'm friendly with Wes and what they've done to turn that team around and build a beautiful stadium, rebrand the club. It's identity, not its brand. It's fabulous.
Yeah,
it's a great story. I like small markets winning championships.
Yeah, you talked about the private equity owner. It was great. He said during our podcast, all he asked Peter Fagan, his president, to do was double revenue. That's it. Just a simple task. That was the simple task. And by the way, win a championship while doing it. So all good there. And a quick David Stern story, because I love these media discussions that you're having with Eben, and you're talking 2x, 3x streaming. I'll never forget David telling me his first broadcast deal where the NBA took money. He said, the network called him and said, we'd like to pay you for your games, whereas previously there was no rights fee that we know today. And David said, I was smart enough to say yes. That was it. I will say yes.
Deal.
So, yeah, exactly. Well, Don, thanks so much for taking the time to join us. Great conversation with you and Eben. We do appreciate it. And I'm also glad that you mentioned LAFC, because coming up next, we're going to have Kurt Badenhausen's conversation with two of the owners of LAFC, Larry Berg and Peter Garber, the most valuable team in MLS.
Great. I think you'll have a lot of fun. They're wonderful guys. Thank you.